All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. As you know, I am not here today. I won't be here tomorrow either. I did want to talk a little bit today about the beginning of the Civil War, really sort of the first battles, the way that the North and South actually got into the fighting. Well, I want to introduce a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of each side. And then you will have the remainder of the period to work on either first do the advantages and disadvantages chart and submit that. And then if you have any time remaining you can use that time to work on the study guide, which I want to remind you is due on Thursday. But anyway, let's start. So of course, the Civil War, we left off on Friday. The Civil War had basically begun. All the southern states had seceded. Abraham Lincoln was president, and we were in the war. As you know, this is just me saying, of course, I'll be out today. The first question we would have to think is why did the southern states feel the need to secede? And there's a number of reasons. You're going to watch a little bit of a video about it independently later, but I think we've kind of gone over it. One of the reasons might be they feared that Abraham Lincoln would get rid of slavery altogether. One reason might be that they felt that the government in Washington, D.C. was no longer listening to them. But of course, the most important reason was that they wanted to continue to own people. There's really just no way around that. The South left the United States because they wanted to continue to own people. Anybody who says otherwise is lying to you either deliberately or inadvertently, but that's the reality. Honestly, the South is not hiding this. This is published in Charleston, South Carolina, just after Lincoln's election. Now, remember, South Carolina was the first of the states that seceded from the Union. And let's see, some phrases that I want to pull out because I think they're really emblematic of what the South was thinking. Here lie the mutilated and disjointed remains of the noblest form of government. And of course, this one, which really speaks to the heart of the issue, that they thought that Abraham Lincoln might want to, quote, elevate the Negro race to equality with the free white inhabitants of the country. They're not saying that as a positive thing. They're saying that as we have to leave because, oh my gosh, there might be equality. If you want to kind of zoom in on this picture, it's interesting. It's scary, but it says kind of the things that you think it's going to say. This is from the Charleston Mercury, again, Charleston, South Carolina. The issue before the country is the extinction of slavery. No man of common sense who has observed the progress of events and who is not prepared to surrender the institution, the safety and independence of the South, can doubt that the time for action has come, now or never. I don't know how it could be any clearer than that. The South is fighting to maintain slavery. This happened first on December 20th, 1860. So that would be about 7 weeks after Abraham Lincoln's election. We saw this map on Friday, so I don't want to go too deeply into it, but it does say that 7 states, including our state of Florida, left the United States before the start of the Civil War, and then Arkansas, Tennessee, Virginia, and North Carolina followed suit after. So we're really into war now. The southern states formed together in what is called the Confederate States of America. Jefferson Davis was inaugurated as the first and, of course, only president of the Confederacy in Montgomery, Alabama, on February 4th, 1861. So, in fact, he takes office as the president of the Confederacy before Abraham Lincoln, a full month before Abraham Lincoln himself takes office as the president of the United States. This is, you see a sort of drawing of the inauguration. This is the first White House of the Confederacy. It's in Montgomery. Eventually, the capital would be moved further north to Richmond, Virginia. Not great for the state of Virginia. I do want to point out that anybody can really call themselves a country. There wasn't really a lot of acknowledgement from other countries that the Confederate States existed. Abraham Lincoln was always very careful not to sort of refer to them as a country, and refer to them still as part of the United States. And as we get into the war a little bit, we'll see that this is an issue for the Confederacy, that they can't trade with other countries because they don't recognize them, and they don't want to stop trading with the North. And as a result, the Confederacy is kind of has to be self-sufficient. And as we know, they don't have the kinds of manufacturing or technology to be able to do that. This is a song. You can see the words there on the right. I actually have tried to find the clip of the song. I can't. I was unable to. If someone finds it, please send me an email with it. It's not great. I think there's a reason why we don't continue to remember songs like this. But there was hope that, of course, Jefferson Davis would be in the White House, meaning the South would win the war and sort of take over the North. Obviously, and thankfully, that never happened. Abraham Lincoln took office on March 4th, 1861. Because of security, he actually arrived in D.C. only the night before, because as we know, the tensions were quite high, and there was I think, well-founded fear that he would be assassinated. Of course, that's a little bit ironic, given that it was after the war that he's going to be assassinated. He is going to face the biggest crisis in United States history. This is our opinion. I don't think that there'd be a lot of pushback. I mean, look, we're going to fight an actual civil war. We might think that we're divided now, or we're divided in the 60s, or we're divided in the civil rights era, or divided in the 20s. But none of those led to an actual civil war like this in the 1860s. His first inaugural address, which we will work with to some extent tomorrow, tries to reassure the nation, but also is a warning. It says the United States would not permit the South to just leave, that in fact it would have to be there's going to be a war. You can click on the image of President Lincoln on the slides. I'll take you to a document, which actually is what we're going to do tomorrow. But on the right, or excuse me, on the left, you will see the law passed by Georgia that explains why they seceded in late 1860 or perhaps early 1861. Yeah, January 19th, 1861. We will compare and contrast them tomorrow. The differences are quite significant. Anyway, about 5.5 weeks after Abraham Lincoln becomes president on April 12th, 1861, very early in the morning, about 4:30, Confederate forces attack the place that you see on the screen in front of you. That is the base at Fort Sumter, which is in Charleston Harbor. So obviously this was a United States base, largely because everything was a United States base up to that point. And this is, in fact, the official start of the war. You see the Fort Sumter in the center there is in blue. It's held by, of course, the United States, which is the Union, the North. But all around it, it's basically surrounded by Confederate soldiers. You see they're firing from Fort Johnson, from Cummings Point, from Fort Moultrie, from the floating battery, from Mount Pleasant. They're even firing from Castle Pinckney. It should not be a shock to you that fairly quickly, in fact, in about 24 hours, the Union surrenders the fort. They were incredibly outnumbered. They were surrounded. It would have been a suicidal decision to try to hold out against this attack. There were, in fact, no casualties. Though I will point out that in a bit of trivia, a misfiring gun during the surrender ceremony, maybe they shouldn't be firing guns during a surrender ceremony. That is just perhaps my opinion. It actually did kill 2 Union soldiers. So we would say that 2 Union soldiers died during the battle, though it's not really part of the actual fighting. And for the rest of the war, Charleston Harbor, which is an incredibly important port. It's deep water. It's where big ships can, enter and dock and get, fixed. This harbor is in control of the Confederacy for the entire rest of the Civil War. So what I'm going to ask you to do is we're going to stop here in the presentation. I want you to open, and I'm going to sort of pause the sharing for a second, or at least I want to go to, this is the assignment. All right. You should open the assignment, which looks like this. You should open the chart, which looks like this. And what you're going to do is you're going to go through these 16 advantages and disadvantages. Like, for example, this side had extremely skilled and effective commanders. I want you to evaluate which side you think this applies to, whether it's an advantage or a disadvantage, and mark that down on the chart right here. All right, you may work with your number group. I do want you to watch this video first. This video is going to talk a little bit about why the South left the war, or excuse me, left the country. I will largely today, ladies and gentlemen, be available by email or by Canvas message. There'll be periods of time where I'm not, but of course I'm at synagogue. But other than that, I'll be available. If you need anything, you can also, of course, ask Miss Funston, though I think they're doing something slightly different. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you hopefully, if the hurricane holds off, on Wednesday, when we will finish up the Civil War and we will review for the test, which is Friday. All right. Have a good rest of your day.